This goes on with the second question that they asked Bishop. What should happen when a person feels that God showed them a sign about their spouse, but the other person is not interested? Should they keep believing or should they move on? Which one of y'all sent this question up here? What is this? Who did this?
If honestly, no, if it's honestly God that showed you the sign about a person and they're not into it right now, you ought to be like Jacob that's willing to work 7 years to get Rachel, then work another 7 years to have her. No, if God, now the question said God, did it not? If God showed the sign, you don't have to fret. Even if it takes time for that person may have to go through things to realize what a prize you were, what a prize you would be. Who knows? But if God showed you that sign, no matter what, you wait. You'd be foolish not to wait if God gives you a sign about a certain person. Dr. Owens, what people don't understand is how valuable people are. I mean, Jesus died for people when he did not have to, per se. He gave up his life. So when you want a person, and God says, I'm going to give you this person, and that person doesn't even seem to look in your direction, just wait. God knows how to bring it about. He's able.
Okay? Now, God is certainly able, but if that person ain't willing to be able, then you got some division. How can two walk together except they be agreed? And the question said, Bishop, this is a person that feels that God showed them a sign.
But I answered the question on the fact that the person got a sign, a definite sign from God. This is not arbitrary. This is not, all right, okay.
Okay. Now, if a person, because I don't know how well they hear from God, you're still believing this is what God told you. Right. But I don't feel like God works like that. Now, if it's really God, it's going to come to pass. But if that's you wanting this so bad, I honestly believe in my heart, why should God force me to want you and I don't want you? Why would God force me? I just know God told me this. When we were in school before, when I was at Purdue and I was just a sophomore in college, and this young man that got saved, I'd been saved before I got there, and he came and he was not somebody I was interested, not attractive, and must have been a junior. I wasn't even interested in getting married, but he told me that God told him. He said I was praying. He got saved, and he was a young man that's really loved God on fire. But I know I wasn't attracted. But the moment he said to me, God told me that you are my wife and that I'm supposed to marry you. And he said God told him that. Well, I didn't know. I think everybody should obey God. So I went home, and my mom said, Pat, what's wrong with you? I said, Mom, I'm just not ready to get married. She said, what? Married? What are you talking about? I said, this guy in school, he told me God told him that. She said, did God tell you? I said, no. She said, girl, God ain't going to tell you to marry nobody that you don't interest. She said, that's just him thinking that. I said, I can go back and tell him no. She said, you better tell him no. So I went back up to the school, and I told him, I said, no. I said, God ain't told me that. God didn't tell me that. So I felt bad because he was such a nice young man, and he was really, and he's from another country, he was really trying his best to live saved and get into the Lord. But I just thought, so I'm saying, well, maybe this is what I said, maybe God is humbling me and making me marry this guy from another country, and I don't even know his language hardly, so I'm just going to, I thought that was being humble because he wasn't playing, he really meant that. He said, God. So I'm saying, to me, there should be a sign on both sides. There should be a sign on both sides that God told me that.
No problem. Now, the boy was wrong because I'm sitting here, bruh, some 47 years later. And that's the problem when people think that they hear from God. They don't always.
Bishop, that's the problem, Bishop,
right.
thinking they're hearing from God.
But if God does ever tell you something, you better wait on it.
Okay? So in those situations, I think eventually, sometimes God gives you something, you may have to hold it in your heart. You all know my story. With Bishop, I didn't ask, I wasn't trying to get married, but God told me Bishop was my husband before Bishop even asked me. So when it came time for me to get married and for Bishop to come and ask me to marry, he had already given me a confirmation. So when he came there, I wasn't just saying, oh, God, I want to marry this man. God said, this is your husband, and you all know my story. So when he came, we were on one accord. We both were in agreement that God had spoke to him and God had spoke to me. So I'm saying sometime during that time, if that's really God that spoke to you, God should touch that other person's heart, and they both should be on one accord with what he's saying.